Thank you for having us, Matthias. Great to be here. I know a lot of your listeners have seen First Phosphate before, so I'll focus really on what's new. After giving a general presentation, there's a lot new, tremendous amount of new information at First Phosphate. So as everybody knows, First Phosphate is igneous phosphate from volcanic rock, specifically for the lithium iron phosphate battery industry and not for fertilizer. We're only interested in the high technology industry, and we can get to that obviously because of the high purity of the volcanic rock. And we're going after this industry right here, the lithium iron phosphate battery industry. As you can see, lithium iron phosphate batteries are now, the global leader of batteries. It's somewhere between 60 to 80% of all batteries produced on planet Earth are lithium iron phosphate batteries. Most of it obviously coming out of Asia. But if you look here, you can see that, the trajectory, right? It's all growth into the future, well into the 2030s and perhaps even into the 2040s. The reason for it is that LFP is really the versatile technology of mass adoption. It's got superior fire safety, well-defined performance. It's the lowest cost battery on the market. But what's really important is this whole section here. When you hear of electrification, all you hear about all day long is electric vehicles, and I think everyone's getting a little tired of that narrative. But if you look at LFP, right, LFP category, only 15% approximately is electric vehicles. There's so many other sectors to LFP, right, like large-scale energy storage, AI data centers, robotics and factory automation, marine and agriculture, defense, small mobility like drones, buses, trucks, consumer products, small consumer products, large consumer products, EV charging stations, and a whole telecom sector. So that's really the beauty of LFP. It cuts across so many different industries. The lithium market has reacted really well to LFP. Just about a year ago, Elon Musk came out and said that, just by adding stationary energy storage batteries, we could double the electricity production without having to really do anything more than that. It's really about, proper management of the grid. And that's what the batteries do. They allow you to take down energy when you have too much, and they allow you to push it back out when you need it. And that's all based on, these type of battery parks that we see all over, Europe and North America. And some of them can be, a kilometer by a kilometer just full of batteries. And that's really important, right? Because all of that runs an LFP battery. It's almost 99% LFP battery that's running all this large scale energy storage that's being deployed all over the world. And right now, this is one of the most massive exports, that China has, because most of it is made in China. And we're trying to re-onshore this into the West. So, Goldman Sachs and UBS and all the big firms have come out and they've, revised upwards their price targets on lithium. The lithium ETF has been up over 100%. And if you want exposure to the lithium market, right, you have over 150 companies traded worldwide. In the lithium sector, you can find 150 stocks in worldwide exchanges in lithium. If you're interested in the iron, that's the F and LFP. There's lots of iron stocks trading all over the world. But when we get down to phosphate, this is where we really need to focus. Phosphate is mostly for agriculture right now. There's a handful of stocks trading on global exchanges in the phosphate sector, and they're all agricultural. There's not really one of them that is fully focused on LFP battery, phosphate for LFP battery, other than First Phosphate. Okay, and the reason that we're so focused on this is because of what I'm going to show you next. It's really here. It's the cathode of the battery, right? The cathode of the LFP battery is 60% phosphate. Everyone's chasing the lithium market when lithium is only 4% of the cathode of the LFP battery. But look at this, a full 60%. And this is going to be the real chokehold in LFP batteries. And this is why our firm has been focused in this almost 4 years now. We started it when, LFP market share was only 30-40% of global market. We knew that was going higher. It did go higher. And now we all want to onshore this here into North America. So our company is very, very far ahead in terms of, phosphate for LFP battery, specifically for LFP battery, no interest in fertilizer. Okay. Now, this whole thesis that I'm talking to you about is very supported here by some of the firms out there that cover this. Benchmark Minerals, for instance, puts phosphoric acid as the second most important element for electrification after copper. Beats out nickel, graphite, lithium, manganese, cobalt, and rare earths. Now, when we look at here, even at the supply of purified phosphoric acid in the Western world, it's this pale blue line. You can see we cannot increase the supply of purified phosphoric acid by much. Meanwhile, the demand for purified phosphoric acid, this big, deep blue space, is growing already, is already going to outstrip supply. That's even before you add in LFP battery. Because already, purified phosphoric acid is used in the West for things like carbonated beverages, Coca-Cola, dental paste, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, fire extinguishing, other industrial uses, food. So when you start adding the amount of LFP battery that is going to require purified phosphoric acid, the minimum is that this is going to double the requirement for PPA. But if you look at what they're saying here at Benchmark Minerals, it'll probably be by a factor of 5 or 10. So we're going right into the sweet spot here with the volcanic igneous rock to fill this gap of purified phosphoric acid, not phosphate for fertilizer. And I'll explain to you why. Igneous phosphate rock is so pure that Almost 95% of it can translate directly into purified phosphoric acid that goes into LFP batteries with a very limited waste stream. The gypsum is fully recyclable because of the purity of the phosphate, which is very different than sedimentary phosphate rocks, right? Sedimentary phosphate rocks are phosphate that's found kind of accumulated at the bottom of old riverbeds, swamps, and it's got a lot of cadmium, uranium, and thorium in it. So only a portion of it can be made into high purity phosphoric acid. The rest of it has to stay back in a fertilizer stream, and it creates a lot of gypsum slag where all the radiation remains in. So if you want to make a lot of purified phosphoric acid in a clean fashion, this is the miracle rock, right? The igneous phosphate rock can do that. But now the next question is, well, where do we find this igneous phosphate rock and how rare is it? Well, truth is it's very rare. 95% of the world's phosphate is found in kind of this red area. This is the sedimentary basin of phosphate. Then there's 4% of the world's phosphate that's in carbonatites. It's kind of Northern Europe and Russia, down here in South Africa, and also here in Brazil. But then only 1% of the world's phosphate is this igneous anorthosite rock that we have in Quebec, and it's the one that beneficiates here up to 41% purity. So let me talk to you a little bit about the carbonatites. The carbonatites found mostly in northern Russia. Obviously, they're behind the sanctions. Russia is the only exporter of such rock. They're able to purify these carbonatites, which generally have rare earth materials in them, and they're able to make a very pure phosphate, and they're able to export. But they're the only ones in the world, and they're now behind the sanctions. In southern Africa, they have these carbonatites as well, but they've had trouble separating out the rare earths, and the geography is also difficult. Same issue here in Brazil, so they use it in fertilizer. But like I said, here in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec, we have access to igneous anorthosite rock, and we've been able to purify that almost up to full purity, 41% to pure P2O5, the highest concentrations ever attained. And also, we're able to recover almost 90% of it, so we don't lose a lot of it. And that's just through very simple non-solvent related extraction. It's just a magnetic extraction, separation of magnetite and ilmenite, and then we float the apatite, and we get to a very pure product. So very, very important strategic resource that we have here for North America and also for Europe and the Western world. So let me tell you a little bit about the mine site. So, it's an open pit mine, which is great. The economics are good on it. It's near power. It's near a major highway. It's not so far from towns that need revitalization from the forestry industry in Quebec. So lots of good workforce. But what's really impressive about this is that we have a 2.5 kilometer long strike zone that I've just showed you here, 2.5 kilometers long, 300 meters wide. And so far we've gone down about 300 to 400 meters, and we're finding a lot of openness on depth. This graphic that you see here was built based on our PEA, preliminary economic assessment, that was done about a year and a half ago. But since then, we've done our full definition drilling that has showed full continuity across the resource. And we're in the process of crunching those numbers to move the resource from inferred and indicated up to indicated and measured, so that then that could form the basis for a feasibility study. Now, we've already been able to move this rock into purified phosphoric acid. We've done this with Prayon of Belgium, the world's largest producer of phosphoric acid. It came out extremely clear, one of the best phosphate products that they've ever seen. So, this is fully validated that this can move into battery material now. This whole resource, what we knew at the PEA stage, okay, to give you an example, would equate to 350 gigawatt hours of LFP batteries, which would mean we'd be able to have enough to electrify half of the fleet of new vehicles produced in North America, that is Canada, USA, and Mexico, per annum for the next 23 years. So a significant resource, a very important one. The NPV on the mine was 2.1 billion, IRR 37%, and the payback 2.9 years. Okay, so I'll move down to a little bit more on the logistics. When you're talking about phosphate, even when you're talking about lithium and all these industrial minerals, people often forget it's not about the biggest resource, it's not about the best resource, it's about the best possible resource at the right spot. What does that mean? You got to be near infrastructure, because you're moving heavy concentrate, right? So if you're not close to the infrastructure, it's going to cost you a lot to do it. So the beauty about Bégin-Lamarche is that we have a very continuous resource. We've had a great sort of grade on the resource, but the most important thing is we're 75 kilometers driving distance from the deep sea port of Saguenay. So, quickly can get out to the port. At the port, it's a deep sea port. That's where we're planning to put in our secondary processing facilities to make phosphoric acid, thanks to a technology license with Prayon. And then also a large part of our phosphoric acid and also our concentrate is already fully bankably and prepaid off-taken to Europe, where we will be able to transit through the deep sea port here of Saguenay very easily over to Europe, but also equally very easily across anywhere in the Atlantic, United States, South America, or anywhere else. The other important thing is right here we've got rail. We're at 50 kilometers from the rail station that can take us all the way down into the heart of North America. And that's really important. And the reason that exists is because this valley here is typically known as the aluminum valley of North America. This is where Rio Tinto processes all the bauxite. to then send it across North America. So this is why it's very well connected with rail. But another important element is that we have a very, very important industrial base in the area. Industrial equipment suppliers and also industrial workforce. This is Quebec's fifth largest population base um, in the province, right? So all these things are really important because when we talk about these industrial minerals, like I said, you can have them, but you need to have them in the right spots where they're economical. So all the economics really work because we're all right tight in with the infrastructure. Extremely important, and we're only 2.5 kilometers, north of Quebec City, and then 2.5 kilometers west from there is Montreal. So we're close to all the markets, close to all the workforce, and we're right onto the NATO base as well, which is really important. Okay, so just to summarize, we plan to extract concentrate at the mine site, move into phosphoric acid at the port of Saguenay, and then move into LFP cathode active material that then will be sent around North America and Europe to go into battery cells, which then make these LFP storage systems that we saw earlier to balance out loads, and a number of other products as well. Okay, this is something I really want everybody to focus on. This is extremely important. If you guys remember, back in October of 2025, there was a spat between President Xi and President Trump, um, and there was a couple of things that were threatened. Right, what was threatened? Rare earth materials. Right, they were going to stop exports of rare earth materials. Two, they were going to stop export of microchip technology. But number three, there's LFP battery technology. Right, the whole LFP battery ecosystem could be stopped. The CAM and also the cells. Right now, this is restricted. Everything up to the CAM is restricted as export from China, but First Phosphate has been able to do this on the road in North America. We've been able to put in place a mine-to-market model. We've been able to take the rock, the igneous anorthosite rock from Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec. Step one, we've been able to make it into a phosphate concentrate, some of the purest in the world, with solventless technology. And Prayon, we've been able to make it into purified phosphoric acid, which can Höganäs, the world's largest producer of iron powder. We've been able to make iron phosphate precursor. Then with Century Lithium. Okay, so this is something that the company is really proud of. We made the first LFP battery cells made in about 25 years with North American critical minerals. And why do I say that is because the first LFP battery cells were actually made in North America. It's a North American invention, LFP cathode active material. That was about in 2001. But by 2003, the technology had left for China. So what we've done is, we've taken from steps 1 to 6, and we've made these first LFP battery cells using our phosphate from our property, also our iron from our property, and the critical minerals downstream from other Canadian and US companies to make these batteries. So what did we do? This is the igneous anorthosite rock here in step 1. We purified it up to phosphate concentrate, a fully solventless process right here. And then with Prayon, the world's largest producer of phosphoric acid, we made purified phosphoric acid from there. And then with GK and Höganäs, the world's largest atomizer of steel powder in Tennessee, we made iron phosphate precursor. Then with lithium from Century Lithium, we made LFP cathode active material. And then we took the anode material, the graphite from Nuvomont graphite. And then with Altech Technologies out of Nevada, we made these battery cells. Now, what was really important is that, it was only about 150 of these cells made, but when we tested them, we cycled them 2,000 times. That means charge and discharge them. They performed like any other battery on the market. So even though it was a small test run, all the critical minerals that go into here and all of the technology processes that go into here were completely validated. And that's extremely important, right? Because we came out with this, the first ever LFP batteries made of North American critical minerals in 25 years. Okay, so why is that really important? Because as you know, back in October of 2025, there was a spat between China and the US, and that's when President Xi threatened three things, right? Rare earths, microchip technology, and LFP cathode active material. So what we have here is the whole LFP cathode active material, LFP battery supply chain that is easily able to be replicated in North America through processes here, which are fully scalable. None of these processes from 1 to 6 are R&D. They're all fully scalable almost immediately. So that is the really important piece of IP here for the company, is that one of the three things that were threatened during the trade wars, First Phosphate has the ability here, not only with the technology but the critical minerals to be able to scale up. Okay, so on to our next slide. We are de-risking the project obviously through major partnerships. We've got larger partnerships at the table. Okay, so next is project de-risking. We de-risk our project through very key relationships, right? We have relationships with some of the largest companies in the world. We have offtakes all the way downstream for the concentrate, phosphoric acid, and even for the LFP cathode active materials. We've got a very strong relationship with our local indigenous group, a full collaboration agreement. We've got a letter of interest from the Quebec government. We've recently been allocated a non-refundable, non-repayable contribution from the government of Canada. We have the Export-Import Bank of Denmark at the table for $170 million LOI to build out the mine. Export-Import Bank of the United States has issued a letter as well for 170 million USD of financing. And now I want to show you something really important here, especially since we have a very large European contingent on the line here, and I just love dealing with Europe. We received a $16.7 million contribution from the government of Canada. But what's really important is that this contribution was under what's called the Global Partnership Initiative. What does that mean? Well, you need another global partner to support you, otherwise you can't get the contribution. Well, First Phosphate got this, right? So here's myself, that's me, signing with Minister Hodgson of Natural Resources in Canada, our president. But these two gentlemen here are actually envoys, one from Belgium, the ambassador of Belgium, and the special ambassador from Belgium and the EU on critical minerals. So these two, jurisdictions, both Belgium and the European Union, supported us to be able to receive this contribution. I think that's extremely important. The collaboration between Europe and Canada, and what you're going to see in the future between our company and the United States and Europe is going to be really spectacular here, and sort of bridging the supply chain that is extremely well needed here, in the Western world. So that's the way we see ourselves. We see ourselves as a Western supply chain for high purity phosphate and LFP battery. And we thank our partners in Europe, right? And everybody on the line here that's listening in from Europe for their great support as shareholders, but also as partners. Okay, so management meets and beats milestones. That's what we pride ourselves on. We've done a tremendous amount here in the last 3.5 years. Nobody believed that we could do it, but we always aim high, right? We always aim high, and we hope to settle high. And if we don't, well, at least we tried. But our next program here in 2026 is we did the full drilling of our infill drilling program at Bégin-Lamarche. We found continuity. The next step is to come out with an updated mineral resource estimate here in the next few weeks. And then after that, we'll be able to show that to our board, determine whether to move into a feasibility study. And then the feasibility study we have eyed to complete by December of this year. So that's extremely aggressive timeline. But the reason we're able to do this is because, last year we raised $30 million on our own without any brokers. And then also we got the contribution from the Canadian government. So that allows us to have all the cash ready to go. We've got all of our internal team ready to go on this, all of our external team. Everybody knows that they're going to get paid. Everyone's, the top professionals in the industry. And we are planning to deliver this feasibility study by December of this year. Many say that it's impossible and we can't do it. And I absolutely love when people tell me something's impossible, because it's a very good challenge. So far, so good. But jokes aside, the really important thing here is really to get these projects up and going as quick as possible. The quicker that we can get this mine into production, the much more valuable it will be. That's why we have the feasibility study targeted for the end of 2026, permitting for early 2027, and then also building out the capital stack in 2027 and start to build in 2028. And we'd like to have a mine in place for 2029 when our definitive and bankable off-takers need to have the materials by. So that's our plan. It's extremely aggressive, but we hope to get there. Okay, something we're very proud of as well here is our share structure, right? We got a very tight share structure. We are debt free. I do not like debt. Obviously, we'll have to take on debt when we build out the mine, but before then, I want to stay debt free. I've seen that as being one of the big failures of all these junior companies, taking on debt when they're pre-revenue and getting into trouble. We've raised $62.5 million Canadian since we started. 4 million of that is from the board. We haven't used any underwriters to do that. We've raised that all ourselves in non-brokered private placements. I know just about everybody who's ever placed a cent in this company. We're very close to these shareholders. There's 40% of the share float is still sitting in those hands. Another 20% is sitting in management. Then we estimate about 40% is the public float, and our First Nation also has 1%. The very important thing in this company is, I take 100% of my salary in stock. The board takes 100% of their salary in stock. Management takes 50% in stock and 50% in cash. And we do that. We did that in the beginning when times were tough to be able to advance the company, but we continue that tradition. Why? Because we want to be as exposed to First Phosphate as we can be. We've got a really great team, a lot of really positive energy. We've got very great professionals in their field, also very humble individuals who work very well together. And so we all want to be as levered into First Phosphate as we can. And that's very rare for a junior company. So, if I look at our board and management, really, the biggest strength I think we have is, we are technology people, we are mining people, we are business people, and we're also capital markets people. So that's really, the real strengths I see in the company. And we're a great team, and we just love to work together, and we just love to advance this project. It's just really a good project that's moving quickly. It's high energy, and it's got great local support, great support at all levels, right up from the local all the way up to the European. Okay, so thank you for that, Matthias. I don't know if your listeners have any questions. Maybe you could read them out to me. I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, there are quite a few questions, and I mean you're a regular guest here, and if someone had invested some money last year, same time, they already made a six-bagger with you. So there's so much exciting news around your development, but also around that. So I saw there's a this big exciting acquisition of Fox River, and maybe you can talk us through it. Why one of the largest gold producers in the world is moving into the phosphate space, and what does that signal about phosphate as a strategic mineral?
Totally fascinating, Matthias. So, Agnico Eagle Resources, who's the Agnico Eagle Mines, who's the second largest producer of gold in the world, set up a subsidiary in October of last year called Avenira Minerals. I think they funded it with 80 million to start, and it was supposed to go and take little bets here and there into critical minerals companies. Obviously, Agnico Eagle being flush with cash, thanks to the price of gold. So they made some acquisitions in some, base metals and precious metal companies, small 5, 10% equity stakes. And then just 2 weeks ago, they come out and they buy Fox River Resources, which is an igneous carbonatite resource in Ontario. Maybe I'll just go back here to our slide. If you look at this slide here, can everybody see that? Are we back on the
Yeah,
slide
yeah,
with the world? Okay. So Martison property is located right here in Ontario. So as you can see, there's three igneous phosphate projects in North America. So this is an igneous carbonatite. Remember I told you about the carbonatites? They're high purity, but they can have rare earths in them, and they're like a little bit tricky. They're hit and miss. We are not really too interested in carbonatites because of that aspect. We stayed here in the igneous and orthosites because we know we can separate them. We can get the battery grade right away. There's no question marks. Nonetheless, Agnico Eagle came in and bought Fox River Resources, which is an igneous carbonatite. Like I said, it's got high purity for fertilizer and potentially for LFP, but they bought it outright. They bought the project outright, I think, for what is it, 95 million or so dollars. So it means they own it and they got to take it into production. That was extremely, extremely bullish on their side. Why? Not only do they come in and into phosphate, which is very different, it's kind of like the opposite of gold. Gold is small, tight veins. Small amount equals a lot of money. They're into these now this big, big, massive deposits of phosphate. It's like moving gravel. It's very different than gold. But also they bought 100% of it. They didn't just buy 5 or 10% like they do in some of these other critical minerals. And they bought for 95 million when their fund was only, I think, 80 million. So there's obviously been some new money gone into that Avenira from Agnico to buy this. So it's really, really interesting what they're looking at. Some people say there might be rare earths in there, so they're looking at it from the rare earth angle. Other people say they're looking at it from the fertilizer angle. Other people say they're looking at it from the LFP angle. We don't know. We will know in the coming weeks what their plans are. One thing I do know, everyone's told me, look, they're a very sharp and very sharp company. If they do something, they do it because they've really looked into it. So I say to people, well, maybe they're looking at igneous phosphate as the new gold of the electrification economy, right? The new gold of LFP. So they want to diversify into something that is outside of precious metals. So really interesting acquisition. It leaves two independent phosphate companies, igneous rock phosphate companies. Those are just the two that you see here side by side in Quebec. We are the company with the highest market cap, the downstream plan, that has produced the LFP battery. So that all of a sudden makes our company extremely valuable, right? It's just massive sector validation that Agnico Eagle has come in. They bought in the deposit that was lower market cap than First Phosphate. That doesn't necessarily have the same downstream trajectory into LFP battery. Is more of a fertilizer play, perhaps pivoting a little bit into LFP. So it just puts all the eyes on First Phosphate. We've had quite a tremendous stock run since then. And it's just great to see the validation come in. Like I've been saying the same things for 3 years. People kind of listen to me, right, Matthias? But when Agnico Eagle comes in and says it, it's an extremely important validator for the industry. So I do wish Agnico Eagle and Fox River all the best, and welcome Agnico Eagle into the industry. First Phosphate continues to be a leader, specifically focused on the LFP battery industry, and we're just so happy that the industry is evolving.
and regarding that deal, does this deal validate the Canadian phosphate assets for the LFP battery supply chain? What's your take on that?
Yeah, if you read their press release, right, when they say why they bought Fox River, they talk about fertilizer and they talk about LFP, right? So, I mean, Fox River started out as a fertilizer-based project. They've obviously tried to shift a little bit to LFP because it's a value add and it's trending. But First Phosphate came in as specifically LFP battery focused. We don't care anything about fertilizer. Our opinion is you can do one or the other, but you can't do both. You can't do both, and you can't do them right. And you especially cannot serve the technology master and serve the agricultural master at the same time. You have to be focused on high tech technology industry, and we're able to do that because of the purity of the rock. We do not have to touch fertilizer. And that's our main competitive advantage is we can focus on, LFP and the needs of the high technology industry. So while I don't disagree with other companies such as Fox River and Agnico Eagle going after the fertilizer and LFP markets all at the same time, they certainly have the money to do it now. We plan to remain, strictly 100% focused on igneous rock and the LFP battery industry. And I think that's where the real value is, just in being focused every day, just getting up and working hard on that one trajectory, serving that one master, the technology master.
And here, two questions that go in the same direction. First one, a bit of a tricky question. So given the Fox River acquisition and the growing strategic interest in the Canadian phosphate assets, do you believe First Phosphate's current share price properly reflects the value of its project portfolio and the LFP battery strategy? And the second question, basically similar token, could this transaction increase strategic interest in First Phosphate from partners and acquirers?
Yeah, good question, Matthias. So first off, I think, as CEOs always think that their stock is undervalued. Me, I think that our stock is valued where investors want to value it, and we do appreciate all the investors out there who have, been purchasing the shares, and obviously the market cap has increased quite a bit in the last 3 weeks. It's interesting. The market cap of First Phosphate has increased by $100 million in the last 3 weeks, which is proportional to the amount that Agnico Eagle paid for Fox River. So yeah, I think a re-rate is going on in the industry. We're very happy. We're like I said, we very much welcome Agnico Eagle into the industry, with all the industry camaraderie that is due. And then in terms of, I think you were asking about First Phosphate being a strategic acquisition or not. Look, I mean, like I said earlier, right? There's 150 or so publicly traded lithium stocks across the world. We've seen consolidation in that space. We've seen, like I said to you earlier, that the LFP battery is 60% phosphate and only 4% lithium. So what's really interesting about what's going on here, right, is that there's only three igneous phosphate producers or projects in North America, right? Two of them are kind of fertilizer based and kind of shifting to LFP, but there's only one that's fully based on LFP and it's got a full downstream supply chain already developed for LFP, right? These batteries that we've been able to make from our own phosphate, a fully validated downstream supply chain, a fully validated process, fully validated critical minerals. People need to understand how difficult that is to do, to validate your own product, to create your own entire downstream. So we've got not only access to the resource, right, but we've got access to the entire downstream. That whole problem that, President Trump had with President Xi, which was what? Rare earths. They've gone out and they're trying to fix that, right? President Trump has thrown how many millions and billions of dollars at, MP Materials and some of the other companies to fix that. Made a big investment. I think it was in an Intel to fix the second problem, which was, microchips, right? Now the third problem, which is the LFP battery supply chain. Who is the only company in North America that's got that full solution to it? So obviously, First Phosphate is sitting back. We're developing our resource, but obviously it's a very strategic piece of infrastructure for North America. So let your minds wander on that one. But we're here to build this out. We're here to build this out. We've been here to build it out since the very beginning. And if in the meantime, there's interest from others to build with us or whatever it may be, obviously we're open to discussion. But we've got something very valuable here.
So I have quite a few questions left, but we have just 1 minute remaining. So maybe you can wrap it up. Why is still now the time to invest in First Phosphate? I mean, the stock already rose quite a bit, but I think there's still some upside, and you probably agree. So why is now the time to invest in First Phosphate?
Yeah. So again, it's LFP, right? Lithium iron phosphate, right? So we talked about where you're going to get your lithium. There's 150 companies out there worldwide. You can get your iron from 100 companies, but in phosphate, there's only one company, as far as we're concerned, that's 100% focused on phosphate for LFP battery. So that we, by definition, the sector leader. If you want to invest, that's the only company to invest in. So once the market starts waking up to this, which it already has, that phosphate is 61% of the cathode of the LFP battery, and that LFP batteries are now almost 80% of the batteries on planet Earth. They have to be onshored into North America. Not only do we have the phosphate, but we've also got the whole system downstream to be able to build that. We've built the first LFP batteries made with our own phosphate in 25 years. I mean, where else are you going to go for the phosphate? So, you got to look at who's going to be the go-to name when there's a new sector, and I think that's First Phosphate. Look at where the go-to names for graphite, for lithium, for rare earths. Look at where they're trading at, and make that comparable and say, what could First Phosphate be worth? Right now, we sit at a $300 million market cap. Medium to small scale lithium companies trade at those market caps. What do the large sector leaders in the lithium space trade at? And could First Phosphate attain those levels too? once phosphate is recognized not only as being essential for the LFP battery transition, but perhaps primordial.
John, exciting times, and thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure, Matthias.